I don't feel like making art today because I fear that I'll make something ugly and I'll end up disappointing myself and people will laugh at me, or no one will see it or get it or care about it. And I'll waste expensive art supplies or simply waste my time. And what's the point anyways when the world is the way it is? I recently asked the subscribers of my newsletter what is keeping them from making art as much as they want to, what they are afraid of when they sit down to paint or draw or write. These are some variations of those answers. Common reasons we're afraid to face the blank page. We're afraid to fail, we're afraid of being judged and criticized by ourselves and others, not living up to our own expectations, we fear that we're wasting time, or we can't stand the discomfort and uncertainty of the creative process. I've faced most of these fears myself and still am on a regular basis. I don't think we ever stop being afraid or insecure as artists. It's simply part of our craft, and a big part of the solution is to make peace with that fact, to remember that this is what it sometimes feels like. No matter how experienced and skilled we get, we are still going to feel this way sometimes. But the professional makes their art anyways, despite of crippling self-doubt and fear and anxiety, because thoughts are just thoughts. They're not truths or predictions of the future. Thoughts are simply statements that appear in your head, out of habit or at random, and for a variety of reasons. There are helpful thoughts and unhelpful thoughts, and most of the negative thoughts you have about yourself are simply unhelpful, unproductive, unnecessary. It doesn't matter if they're true or not, or if they're trying to protect you in some way. Are they truly helpful? Do they make your life better? Do they make you a better person? Or do they just ruin the fun for you over and over again? We spend way too much time blindly believing our own thoughts, giving them weight and letting them decide over our lives. But we don't have to be imprisoned by or limited by our thoughts. We don't need to have our days ruined by them. I know it's much harder in practice, but the next time you think something depressing about yourself or your art, try just stopping for a second and say to yourself, that might or might not be true. Who knows? Who cares? There's a difference between having a thought and believing in it. You can have a negative, fearful thought and simply ignore it. It takes practice, but it's possible. It's how I got my driver's license, despite initially being terrified of driving and convinced that I would get myself and other people killed. And it's how I've overcome my fear of the blank page, and my fear of putting out videos, and my fear of being seen and criticized and unliked. I have negative thoughts. I just don't pay as much attention to them as I used to. You might be 100% convinced that you're a bad artist that will never have an original idea and will never sell anything you've made. That does not mean it's true. It most likely isn't. But the more you believe it's true, the more you'll subconsciously self-sabotage to make it true. That's why it's an unhelpful thought. Don't feel bad about having it though, or try to forcefully override it with a more positive thought. Accept that you're having negative thoughts and then ignore them, because they're just thoughts, not facts. With that said, here are all of my most effective methods of overcoming fear of the blank page and fear around making art in general. Whenever I have a bad art day or I'm experiencing art block, I use one of these strategies, and it always helps. The first is to ask myself, why am I really doing this? Why am I making art? Why am I making this particular thing? Am I doing it for likes or for followers or in the hopes of going viral or getting a sale or impressing someone else? Am I doing it out of habit or because of some arbitrary goal I've set for myself? Quite often, I find out that my reasons for making art aren't very good reasons, and choosing a better reason might change the whole game. Maybe I would prefer to make art just for myself, just for the selfish pleasure of it, to indulge myself for a while, the same way you might indulge in a few hours of video gaming or playing in the snow, or baking a cake. You can make art for the same reason, not to perform or impress or reach some lofty goal, but simply to enjoy yourself. Which brings me to the next strategy, where I ask myself, what would make this fun again? I have somehow accidentally taken all of the fun out of art making. How can I put it back? Could I try another art medium, or another technique, or maybe a different subject, or use different materials, or place myself in a different setting, maybe writing longhand instead of on a keyboard, or drawing in a lined notebook instead of on drawing paper, or painting outside or by the kitchen table instead of in my studio. For me, the answer to this question is almost always to loosen up. My perfectionism makes me stiff and stale. I am so obsessed with my preconceived notions of what this should look like that I don't dare to take risks or make bold decisions or surprise myself too much, which makes for a really boring or frustrating painting session. So when I ask myself, how could this be more fun? The answer usually comes immediately from my subconscious. Loosen up and have some goddamn fun. And that brings me to the next strategy, which is to shift away from the result and more towards the experience. If I'm not enjoying the creative process, I don't see any good reason to continue. There are other and much better ways to make money and to spend my free time. So why put myself through this if it just makes me feel bad? I don't think I'm the only one who struggles with this. Badly wanting to enjoy a creative craft, but not being able to. If it was just about quitting, then we wouldn't even talk about art block or writer's block. We have those conditions because we want to enjoy the process, but we don't know how. What works well for me is to ask myself, how do I want this to feel? In my ideal version of this, what would making my art feel like? What subjects would I choose and what colors? What size of canvas? How would I sit or stand? And how would I move my hand? And what would I feel inside? I have a dream version of my painting process that rarely matches my actual technique unless I remind myself of it. And I have to remind myself all the time that I want to paint with relaxed confidence. I want to feel free and reckless. I want to make a mess and surprise myself. I want my painting sessions to pass by in a blur of loud music and wild brushstrokes and a bit of dancing. I want to feel sweaty and exhausted and exhilarated afterwards. That's how I want to feel. And that's how it can feel if I decide to. Even if I don't start out feeling confident or relaxed, I can pretend to be. I can act as if I am, and that goes a long way. Sometimes I manage to trick my brain into believing that I am that wild and confident artist, and I'm often pleasantly surprised at what I create while in that pretend state. Feel good while you're making your art, and you will probably also feel better about what you create. At least that's my experience. Another thing I do when I get frustrated with myself and feel like I'm not improving is to lower the difficulty level, going back to the drawing board, so to speak. I might have been struggling with the same drawing for hours or made several bad paintings in a row, and I'm just about ready to rage quit. Time for a timeout. I abandon my goal of trying to make something I'm happy with, and instead I commit to practicing. I analyze exactly what it is that I'm struggling with, what I wish I was better at, and then I look up resources online to help me learn that thing. I might follow a few tutorials, or maybe take a class or a course. It always relaxes me to remember that I'm not struggling because I'm an inherently bad artist. I'm struggling because I'm trying to do something I haven't learned yet, or practiced enough yet. And instead of hating myself for not suddenly, magically performing the way I want, I should teach myself to do the thing I want to be able to do. If someone else out there can do it, I can learn to do it as well. No one is born a great artist. We all have to study and practice to get where we're at. So if your art skills aren't where you want them, stop beating yourself up or avoiding the blank page and start studying and practicing instead. It'll take the pressure off and make you feel more in control of your creative process. And finally, if my art block is really bad and I am terrified to mess up, I might drastically lower the stakes to the point of expecting failure. I might even look forward to it with glee and curiosity. It's a form of reverse psychology. Instead of expecting a masterpiece of myself, I expect to fail, and to fail in a spectacular way, and then have a good laugh at it. I tell myself that this is the warm-up before my actual practice. This is just to clear my throat, so to speak. It's a throwaway piece, or maybe a sketch of something I might try later. When my expectations are this low, I cannot fail, no matter how hard I try. And that is such a relief. I often end up feeling so relaxed that I accidentally create something that I love. It happened a lot of times. Many of my favorite paintings are on really bad quality paper because they were meant to be practice sketches. Lower the stakes. Take away the possibility of failure. Focus on having fun and experimenting or making a practice sketch and see what happens. Those are my hacks to overcoming fear of the blank page. One important thing I want to add before I go. If you're really having a bad day and you feel stressed out and truly don't feel like making art, that's okay. You're a human being. We don't always feel like it, and we don't always have to overcome our emotions and power through no matter what. Sometimes the kindest and most productive thing you can do is to cut yourself some slack, to do something else, to relax, to take a break from making art until your creative well has been refilled and you've gained some perspective on things. Sometimes we just need to miss something for a little while in order to truly appreciate it. Don't feel bad about not making art. Don't feel bad about having negative thoughts about it. All of it's totally normal, and you're not a bad artist or person because of it. And you're not alone. If you want to feel even less alone, I suggest you join my weekly newsletter. It's called Confessions of a Terrified Creative, and every Friday I write about my week and what I'm working on, what I'm thinking about, and what I'm struggling with, and also the ideas or insights I've had that can help other creatives, and a bunch of read and watch recommendations and other stuff as well. We're a little community at this point, and you are very welcome to join. The link is down below in the description. As always, thank you for watching or listening, and I'll see you in the next one.